Are we witnessing the end of the German model? I'm sorry to approach you like this without preamble, but if the economic news of France is causing a lot of talk at the moment, that of Germany is not left out. For 50 years, Made in Germany has been synonymous with excellence and reliability, and even more so since reunification. This label has become the symbol of the economic power of a nation that has established itself as the engine of the European continent, with economic indicators among the most efficient. Germany is the third world economic power in 2023, the third largest exporter, and the third largest manufacturer of automobiles in the world. However, if the pandemic and the energy crisis have disrupted activities throughout Europe, they have also revealed the flaws of the famous German model, long considered unshakable. The setbacks continue, and this time it is no longer a problem of conjuncture, but of structure. The pillars of the German model are collapsing, bringing with them the entire industrial sector, a symbol of its success. Car flagships such as Volkswagen, Mercedes, BMW or Porsche, once invincible, have never seemed so fragile. The malaise goes further. The chemical industry, machine tools, and even the banking sector are at their wits' end in the face of headwinds that are raging against Germany and what brought it to the head of world trade. As Germany is the first partner of all the other countries in the European Union, understanding what is happening to it is essential. So we are going to talk about heat engines, gas plants, chemistry, energy transition, dependency, blockages, obsolescence, and recession. Faced with these economic upheavals affecting Germany and Europe more broadly, it is natural to wonder about the stability of our own investments. What was the German model? Jahre deutsche Ingenieurskunst. German quality is not a legend, it's an art of living. When we talk about German cars, we are not talking about a simple means of transport, but about precision jewelry, sophisticated engineering, longevity, robustness, and kilometers of pure pleasure behind the wheel. A German machine does not just work, it dances with a mechanical grace that all its competitors envy it. German quality is also much more than a competitive advantage. It is a promise of uncompromising performance and proverbial reliability, and it is mainly thanks to this that Germany has won its bronze medal in the ranking of the largest economic powers in the world, behind the United States and China, and ahead of Japan. Like making quality, it pays off. So what is the German model? This is a dynamic that the country embraced after the Second World War and which strengthened after reunification. It is based on 4 pillars: industry, training, foreign policy, and energy. The industry represents 20.8% of the added value created in the country, which is twice as much as in France. Germany is the 7th most industrialized country in the European Union. The training is rigorous to run the factories with a perfectly educated and qualified workforce. To sell everything that comes out of the production chains, it is necessary to establish relations abroad, join supranational organizations, sign treaties and trade agreements. In short, integrate into the world economic circuit. There is nothing like an ultra-liberal foreign policy to facilitate the sale of German quality all the way to China or Colombia. Energy, but above all, the basis of this incredible mechanism is energy, especially when it is cheap. As we know, the economy is nothing more or less than transformed energy. It is enough for a country to suddenly discover important energy resources, as was the case, for example, in Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, or Australia, to name only the most recent, and growth suddenly explodes, either because the country is industrializing or because the surplus energy is sold abroad, or both. The more resources you have, the more you can produce. Germany has long had large resources, first coal before adopting gas. Thanks to her model, she has hardly experienced the crisis since the war. We envy its trade balance, which alone finances 50% of government spending, its perfectly controlled debt level, and its finance laws, which are always in balance. In 2015, German quality is spreading everywhere. We see Bosch logos on almost every car in the world. We get Nivea cream even in pharmacies in Mongolia. And to find ladybugs, go to Mexico, where Volkswagen factories have been running until 2024. By the way, Germany, the most populous country in Europe, has become to Europe what China is to the world, an engine of growth. It is the number one European partner of all the other member countries, and these number partners are the same as for everyone else, China on the one hand and the United States on the other. But this well-oiled system has a huge design flaw born at the end of the 40s. It does not integrate the climate emergency. The weak point. Here is the big weak point of Germany. Energy. If German quality has sold so well around the world for so long, it is because the country has been able to take advantage of favourable conditions with access to cheap energies, in particular Russian gas. At the end of the last century, Germany turned to fossil fuels at 85%. Gas represents 50% of the total energy mix, and this gas is 30% Dutch, 30% Norwegian, and 23% Russian. The rest is basically coal. Since Russian gas is cheaper, the country has invested in the construction of gas pipelines that cross Europe and connect it directly to its supplier in Russia. Yes, but here it is. All this is not expensive, but it pollutes, and much too much. Faced with the impending environmental emergency, Germany knows that it will have to change its habits and launches an ambitious plan in 2001 to prepare its energy transition as well as possible. This is the Energiewende, which provides for the gradual abandonment of fossil fuels in favor of cleaner sources, wind, solar and atomic, and the total decarbonization of the economy in 2050. The plan started well in 2005. The share of fossils fell to 65% and the atom fills 30% of the needs. But in 2011, the accident between Fukushima and Berlin, already deeply environmentalist, gave the signal for the abandonment of atomic power plants. In 2015, the German mix has already changed a lot. It now contains only 15% atoms, 44% fossils, and 32% renewable energy. The projects are progressing well, but the adverse effects soon began to be felt. First, energy prices have exploded, going from $20.50 per MU in 2010 to $61 in 2015 and $67 in 2020. And when the Russian gas crisis arrives in 2022, it exceeds $150 and reveals another major flaw. Rather than running its own polluting power plants that cost an arm to maintain, Germany has chosen to import its energy from abroad for the sake of profitability. In other words, it has chosen to support its energy transition on cheap, of course, but foreign resources. In 2021, just before the start of the war in Ukraine, it imports 78% of its consumption and 46% of its gas is Russian. And when the first sanctions fall on Russia, they mainly have the effect of depriving Europe, and in particular Germany, of a significant part of its energy. Forced to find an emergency solution, it turns to American or Qatari LNG, 4 times more expensive than Russian gas, and which also imposes the need to equip specialized sites for its treatment and storage. For the German industry, the punishment is immediate. Already heavily affected for 2 years by inflation and pandemic-related lockdowns, production costs are exploding, and Deutsche Qualität is suddenly losing its shine. The largest industrialist in the country, the national flagships, the best ambassadors of Germany abroad, it is the car manufacturers who represent 25% of manufacturing activities. If we add to it the manufacturers of large machinery and construction equipment such as Liebherr or DMG Mori, we arrive at 40%. However, the entire sector has already been suffering since the health crisis from disruptions in deliveries, the rise in rates, which has severely limited investments, the increase in production costs linked to inflation, and the increase in raw material prices. Domestic demand is low and external demand is growing less quickly, with a less spendthrift Chinese customer and especially less convinced by German quality than it was even 5 or 10 years ago. Not to mention that even the most beautiful German engine capacities no longer have any effect on a motorist convinced to drive electrically. In this branch of the market, the leaders are now called Tesla or BYD, and for the first time in decades, they are not German. The news in the Vagi case BMW and Mercedes announce a margin decrease in the second quarter of 2024. Porsche has lowered its business forecast for this year, and 60% of manufacturers announced that they want to reduce their workforce this year. But among them, it is the Volkswagen Group that causes the most concern. Volkswagen is a whole piece of German history, the symbol of the post-war miracle, born from a project, a car for the people under the Nazi regime. The brand has reinvented itself as a car empire with prestigious names that cover all segments of the market. Luxury with Porsche, Audi, Bentley, Lamborghini and Bugatti. Premium with Volkswagen and Skoda, the general public with Seat, heavy trucks with MAN, Scania, and motorcycles with Ducati. Today, it is an industrial giant present in 153 countries with 118 production sites spread over all continents. In 2021, the group employs more than 675,000 people worldwide, including almost 300,000 in Germany, a little more than in 2019. Volkswagen is the Kombi, the Beetle and the Golf, and above all the symbol of German engineering. He has pioneered many technological innovations, from the TDI engine to the MQB platform and driver assistance systems, an audacity that has often paid off. Just before the health crisis, it is simply the largest seller of vehicles in the world ahead of Toyota, with almost 11 million units sold in 2018 and 2019, an absolute record. 5 years later, however, the band is doing very badly. It's already been 4 years that the activity has been declining, and when I say decline, in 2023, it fell by 23% compared to the level of 2019, and profitability decreased by 16%. Even worse, on the Frankfurt Stock Exchange, the group has lost 60% of its value since April 2021, with a stock that is now trading below $100. You have to go back to 2010 to find such a low price. Maintaining margins is becoming difficult, and Volkswagen is now also considering laying off staff soon and closing several factories to adjust production to lower sales. Since the announcement, it has been going around the world as one more sign of the ruthless decline of the German economy. Layoffs. That hadn't happened in 87 years. The big manufacturers are not the only ones struggling in the whirlpools of the German recession. Other smaller companies, such as the Bosch or Continental equipment manufacturers, other subcontractors, and hundreds of SMEs and VSEs are being swept away in spite of themselves in the turmoil. All this obviously does not smell very good for the German economy, which has already posted almost zero growth for 2 years, 0.2% in 2023, and we expect a little more, 0.2% in 2024. Public finances have gone off the rails since 2022 with the whatever it costs German version. Part of a budget surplus of 13.5 billion in 2019, it closes on a deficit of 90 billion in 2023, down. But Berlin will have to find 39 billion this year to complete its finance law, and probably as much next year. Not simple with such disappointing fundamentals. On the employment side, the unemployment rate rose again this month to reach 6% against 4.9% in 2019, and is expected to increase further to reach 8% next year. The prospects are bad. The automotive sector employs 16.5% of the country's working population and has already reduced the workforce by 6% last year. The other dominant industrial activity, chemistry, 5% of GDP and 466,000 employees, is also affected. The branch is facing major difficulties with sales, very disturbed by the health crisis, which have fallen by another 14% in 2023, and 95% of business leaders convinced of having to reduce the wing this year. What's next? Well, all is not lost. Faced with this cascade of problems, there is still 3 good news. First, inflation finally fell below the 2% mark in August. Then, energy prices have also been falling since the end of last year. And finally, the key rates began their descent in June. Let's hope that the German industrialists will find there's something to breathe a little. It is customary to say that when the German industry coughs, the whole country catches a cold. But this time the virus is more serious, and in addition, it is very contagious. Germany is at a critical juncture in its economic history. What we are witnessing at the moment will probably have as much impact on the German economic landscape as the reunification, the oil shocks, or the depression of the 90s. The model that has been its strength for decades is now showing its limits in the face of the challenge of the 21st century. The Deutsche Qualität has become obsolete. The energy transition, the digital revolution, and the emergence of new competitors on the international scene are calling into question its industrial supremacy, and recent crises have revealed its flaws. The Made in Germany has certainly not said its last word, but it will have to completely reinvent itself to regain its former brilliance. It's going to take a lot of money, and it's going to take time. Until then, Germany's woes will have repercussions far beyond its borders. Not only its own prosperity, but also the economic stability of the whole of Europe will depend on its ability to transform itself. So now, let's take up my original question. In your opinion, is this the end of the German model? I can't wait to hear what you think. It's happening in the comments.